The day my parents finally learned the truth about me, my mom dropped her coffee mug and my dad just sank to the kitchen floor. They stared at the TV screen where I, their loser son, calmly told a reporter how I'd been secretly paying their mortgage, covering my dad's meds, and keeping the bank from taking their house for the last 2 years. But I should probably start from the beginning. I grew up in what everyone around us called a good, traditional American family. The kind where success is measured by one simple checklist. Good grades, good college, stable job, house in the suburbs, kids. I broke that checklist somewhere around middle school. I was 12 the first time my dad called me a loser. I brought home a report card that wasn't awful, but it wasn't perfect either. A couple of C's, 1D in math. For me, it was a bad semester. For him, it was proof that my life was already going off the rails. Look at the Henderson's kid, he barked. All honors classes, robotics club, straight A's. And you? You just sit on that stupid computer all day, cutting up videos. Who's gonna pay you for that? Back then, I was obsessed with editing. We had this old, wheezing desktop that sounded like a plane taking off every time I opened a program. I'd record dumb skits with my friends on a cheap camera, then stay up late, try to turn them into something that felt like a real short film. Watching raw chaos turn into a story made sense to me in a way algebra never did. To my dad, it was nonsense that won't put food on the table. My mom was softer, but her words cut deep in a different way. Sweetie, please, she sighed once, holding my report card. We just don't want to be embarrassed. At least get something decent so we can show the family you're doing okay. Show the family. Not understand me. Not ask what I actually wanted. Just have something to show. High school made it worse. I tried it first. I sat through tutoring sessions, copied notes, pretended I cared about AP calculus and chemistry. But the second my parents went to bed, I'd sneak back onto the computer and dive into editing. I started taking tiny freelance gigs online. Simple stuff, cutting clips together, adding royalty-free music, basic subtitles. The first jobs paid almost nothing, but watching some random stranger send me $5 for something I made felt unreal. Then I got my first big gig, $50 to edit a promo for a small online shop. I spent my whole week walking instead of taking the bus, skipped lunch a couple days, just so I could have time and quiet at home to hit the deadline. When the money finally landed in my PayPal, I bought my mom a decent hairdryer to replace the old one that kept sparking. Wow, she said surprised. Where'd you get the money? I've been doing some editing online, I shrugged. My dad, of course, had to weigh in. That's not a real job, he scoffed. If you want to work, get something serious. Go bag groceries or stock shelves. At least that's honest work. In our house, serious meant miserable but socially acceptable. Then came junior year and the conversation every American teenager dreads. College. My parents had a very clear plan. I was going to ace the SAT, get into a good 4-year university, major in something respectable like pre-law or business, then climb some corporate ladder. Meanwhile, I was secretly researching community college film programs and online editing courses, trying to figure out any path that didn't involve me slowly dying in a suit behind a desk. My SAT scores came back, average. Not terrible, not amazing, just okay. Not the kind of scores that impress parents who care more about bragging rights than actual happiness. We sat at the dinner table that night in silence until my dad finally slammed his fork down. You can't even get this right, he snapped. You know what? Maybe those computer games and videos are exactly where you belong. You're throwing your life away. My mom started crying quietly. How will you live without a degree? She whispered. What will people think? That was always the question. What will people think? I tried to explain that I wanted to go a different route. That I could start small, keep freelancing, maybe enroll in a cheaper program focused on media instead of some overpriced university I'd hate. They didn't hear a word. My dad looked me dead in the eyes and said the sentence that still rings in my ears. You either do this our way or you get out of this house. I'm not supporting a loser who refuses to grow up. I laughed at first. I honestly thought he was bluffing. You're serious? I asked. Dead serious, he said. You don't want to be a real student. You don't get a room under my roof. My mom tried to negotiate. Just go to the business program for a couple years, she begged. Once you have a degree, you can think about your hobbies. My dreams, the one thing that made me feel alive, were hobbies to them. I told them no. I told them I'd rather move out and figure things out on my own than spend 4 years drowning in something I hated. That's when it happened. Fine, my dad said coldly. Pack your stuff, and don't come crying back when it all falls apart. We're done bailing you out. He didn't yell. That somehow made it worse. I packed what little I had, a couple hoodies, some t-shirts, my beat-up laptop, an external hard drive with all my projects. That was my whole future, stuffed into one torn duffel bag. My mom stood at the sink, scrubbing the same plate over and over, pretending not to see me walk past. At the door, my dad threw one last line at me. "We don't have losers in this family. Remember that." Funny. I remember thinking, pretty sure you do. You just kicked him out. I ended up sharing a tiny, moldy apartment with 3 other guys in the city. 2 of them were doing Uber and DoorDash. One worked nights at a warehouse. I slept on a sagging futon that squeaked every time I breathed. Daytime, I did whatever I could for cash, delivering food, helping at a print shop, random side gigs from Craigslist. Nighttime was for editing. I said yes to almost everything. Vlogs, product promos, wedding videos, YouTube intros. Some clients were rude. Some disappeared without paying, but slowly my portfolio grew. Then, one day, I got an email that changed everything. "Hey, we've seen some of your edits online," it read. "We're a digital media company that produces content for a few mid-sized YouTube channels. Are you open to ongoing work?" I must have read it 10 times. Part of me was sure it was a scam. It wasn't. We started small, just a few videos a month. Then more. Then even more. For the first time, I wasn't just scraping by. I could pay my share of the rent on time. Then I upgraded my laptop. Then I got my own room. And that's exactly when my mom called. We hadn't really talked in almost a year. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice sounding older somehow. "How are you?" The question felt like a formality, but I answered anyway. "I'm working. I'm okay," I said. "Where?" she asked. "In the city." "And are you working a real job now?" she asked carefully. "Not just the computer stuff?" I had to bite back a laugh. "Yeah, Mom," I said. "It's real." She hesitated, then finally got to the point. "We're having some issues," she said, "with the house. Turns out, the shiny kitchen renovation and the "we deserve something nice" purchases they'd made had all gone on credit cards and a home equity loan they could barely afford. "The rates went up," she said. "Your dad's hours got cut at work. If we miss another payment, we might lose the house." There it was. Not "we're sorry." Not "we miss you." Just, "we're in trouble." I felt anger rise in my chest, so hard it almost choked me. I wanted to say, "Ask the Henderson's kid you always loved more. Ask your perfect future lawyer." Instead, I heard myself ask, "How much do you need?" She told me the number. To them, it was huge. To me, it was almost everything I'd saved so far. I thought about my new laptop, the small emergency fund I'd started, the dream of eventually having my own place that wasn't falling apart. "I'll see what I can do," I finally said. She didn't ask if it would hurt me financially. She didn't ask if I had my own debt or goals. Just, "Thank you. We don't know what else to do if this doesn't work out." I didn't sleep that night. Years of resentment were fighting inside me with the simple, stubborn fact that, despite everything, they were still my parents. Flawed, harsh, blind to who I really was, but mine. The next day, I went to the bank and paid off the amount they owed. "Who should we list as the payer?" the woman at the desk asked. I opened my mouth to say my name, then stopped. "Can you put it under a company name instead?" I asked. She nodded and took the info for the LLC my media work went through. I didn't want them to know it was me. Not yet. A few days later, my mom called again. Her voice was shaking, but this time from excitement. "Someone paid it off," she practically shouted. "The bank said some organization took care of the whole thing. They sent us a letter and everything. It doesn't say who, but there's a stamp and—" "That's good," I said quietly. "I'm happy for you." "Do you think it's some government program?" she wondered. "Maybe we got lucky or something." "Lucky? Yeah, that's one word for it." After that, it became a pattern. My dad's health started getting worse. Hospital visits, tests, prescriptions. Every few months, my mom would call, voice soaked in guilt and desperation. "I'm sorry to bother you again," she'd say, "but your dad's insurance doesn't cover everything." And every time, I found a way to help without using my name. I'd call the billing department and ask if they accepted donations toward patient accounts. I'd quietly send payments online. I'd route support through my company, so it just looked like financial assistance. I told myself it wasn't about buying their love or forgiveness. I didn't want a parade. I didn't want to hear, "You see, we always believed in you," when I knew that wasn't true. I just wanted them to be okay, even if they still thought I was barely scraping by chasing a hobby. By the time I was 28, things with my work had taken off. Our little operation had become a full-on production team. We handle whole channels now, scripting, editing, thumbnails, everything. One of our documentary-style series about kids from small towns chasing creative careers started getting real traction. It was kind of twisted, honestly. I was telling the stories of people like me, Kids everyone wrote off as unrealistic dreamers, while still hiding my own story from the two people who shaped it the most. Then, one day, a journalist reached out. We're doing a segment on young people whose parents used to see them as screw-ups, but now brag about them, she said. We found your series. Would you be open to an interview about your path? I almost said no. My life didn't fit the cute narrative she wanted. This wasn't one of those feel-good stories where the parents apologize early, the kid forgives instantly, they all hug on camera, roll credits. In my world, there'd been years of silence, half-truths, and help they didn't know came from me. But something in me was tired of staying quiet. I agreed. On one condition, no names or faces of my parents, no digging into their lives. I would tell my side, that's it. She agreed. We sat in a studio, lights in my face, my clip to my shirt, and for the first time ever, I said it all out loud. How I was kicked out at 18. How I couch surfed and delivered food to survive. How I built my career one low-paying project at a time. How every year or so, I'd secretly swoop in and keep my parents from losing everything, while they thought some program or kind stranger had stepped in. I talked about how it felt to be called a loser by the people whose approval you want the most, and how, over time, I stopped living for that approval. I didn't plan on showing them the interview. I assumed, honestly, they would never see it. It was on a regional channel, and they mostly watched the same news station every night. But small towns have big mouths. A neighbor saw it. They recognized my last name, recognized my face, recognized my parents' house from a B-roll shot I hadn't even noticed. That's how my parents found out the truth, not from me, but from the evening news. I came home late that night, opened my phone, and saw a dozen missed calls from my mom. A few from a number I didn't recognize, probably my dad's. My heart dropped. When I finally called back, my mom picked up on the first ring. Is it true? She blurted out. I took a breath. Is what true? All of it, she said, her voice breaking. What you said on TV. That we kicked you out. That we called you a loser. That you paid our mortgage. That you. Her voice cracked completely. That you paid for your father's surgeries. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said. It's all true. Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The heavy, sharp kind that make your stomach twist. Then I heard it. A quiet sob. Why didn't you tell us? She cried. Why didn't you just say that you'd made it? That you were doing well? That you were the one helping us? I let out a bitter little laugh. Would you have believed me? I asked. Back when you were telling people I'd probably end up living in your basement forever? She didn't answer. I could hear my dad in the background asking, what's he saying? Her muffled reply. It was him. It was all him. A moment later, my dad took the phone. Son, he started, then stopped. I had never heard him hesitate like that. I watched that whole thing, he finally said. At first, I thought you were exaggerating, that you were making us look bad for TV or something. But then they showed those papers from the bank, the dates, the amounts. I remembered the exact day they told us some organization paid our debt. His voice got rougher. Was that you? He asked. Yeah, I said. It was me. Another pause. Then, very quietly, I was wrong. 3 words I had been waiting over a decade to hear. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, you proved me wrong. Just, I was wrong. I didn't understand what you were trying to do, he continued. I thought that computer stuff was a waste of time. I thought I was toughening you up. That if I pushed hard enough, you'd become who you were supposed to be. He swallowed hard. I didn't see that you already were becoming who you were supposed to be. I just couldn't accept it. And instead of supporting you, I push you out. I hurt you. I'm sorry if that still means anything. I stared at the wall of my apartment, my own place now, with decent furniture, my gear set up just the way I liked it. I had pictured this conversation in my head 100 times. Sometimes I screamed at him. Sometimes I hung up. Sometimes I said something cinematic and perfect. What I actually said was simple. I don't know if I can just forgive everything, I said. But I hear you. Over the next few days, my parents lived in a storm of emotions. The neighbors kept calling and texting my mom. We had no idea your son was doing so well. He's so talented. You must be so proud. Proud, a word they had never really used about me before. My mom tried to rewrite the story a bit. We were just worried about him, she told anyone who asked. We didn't want him to struggle. Maybe we were too strict, but we just wanted the best. But in private, with me, she dropped the act. One night, she sent me a picture of their kitchen table. On it was a stack of letters, old bank statements, payment confirmations. On one of them, she had circled something in red pen and zoomed in before sending it. Payer, my company name, LLC. Authorized by, my full name. I stare at the photo. I looked through everything tonight, she wrote. All the times we were saved. All the times some program or donor stepped in. Every single time, it was you. Then she added, you were there for us, even after we pushed you out. I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how to forgive myself. But I want to try, if you'll let me. For the first time in a long time, I cried while reading a text. Not just from pain, from relief, from anger, from love I thought had died. A few weeks later, I went back to my hometown to visit. Not for Christmas, not for a holiday, just because it felt like the right time. My mom was waiting on the porch before I even got out of the Uber. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally, like life had chipped away at the armor she always wore. She walked up to me and just wrapped her arms around me, pressing her face into my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered, for every time I called your dreams silly, for every time I cared more about what the neighbors thought than what you felt. My dad came out a minute later. He didn't rush in for a hug. He just put his hand on my shoulder in this awkward, stiff way and said, thank you for the house, for the hospital bills, for not letting us drown, even when we threw you overboard. We went inside and sat around that same old kitchen table where I'd heard the word loser so many times. Nobody said it that day. We weren't magically healed. There was no touching piano music playing in the background. We didn't suddenly become a perfect family. But for the first time, we were honest. They didn't pretend they'd always believed in me. I didn't pretend their words hadn't almost crushed me. We just sat with the truth. Later that night, back in my apartment, I got a message from an old classmate I hadn't talked to in years. Dude, I saw your interview, he wrote. Our parents were the same way. Yours just kicked you out faster. I'm glad you made it anyway. You made me realize something. We don't have to prove our worth to people who refuse to see it. But we can still choose to be better than they were to us. I read that message 3 or 4 times. My parents spent years thinking I was a failure. They kicked me out for not fitting into their idea of success. They laughed at the thing that eventually became my whole career. And when they finally learned the truth, that their loser son had been the one quietly keeping them afloat, it didn't magically fix everything. But it did change something. I didn't become their hero. I didn't erase all the hurt. I just stopped needing their approval to feel like I wasn't a loser. Now, when my mom calls and asks, how's work going? With your videos and all that, I don't hear judgment in her voice anymore. I hear curiosity. And that, honestly, is the plot twist I never saw coming.